This is the Automotive Talent Show, hosted by Cameron Cresswell, bringing you conversations with people shaping the automotive industry across Australia, New Zealand and beyond. Each episode explores career journeys, business stories and real insights into the market, the challenges, the shifts and what's happening on the ground right now. This is Automotive Talent. Let's begin.
Hi everyone and welcome to today's Automotive Talent Show podcast. In this episode, my guest is Mark Beitz of Barton's Automotive fame. In this episode, we discuss under sevens footy player to business owner, 25 years at the Helm, technology and dealer land, the wins and the frustrations, empowering people and the future of community automotive dealerships. It's a cracking episode, so let's get into it. All right, the Mark Beitz story. So appreciate you taking the time to join with me today, mate, and have a little session on our lovely little podcast. For those that don't know the Mark Beitz story, obviously well known from the Bartons Group and Barton's fame, but take us back to where the story all begins, mate. You're born and bred on the Bayside of Brisbane?
Yeah, Cameron, I'm born and bred, been here all my life. So, when a Manly boy and, ended up with this business, which... Yeah, the way I look back over my journey, I'm pretty lucky to be living, working in the area that I grew up. It's pretty rare.
Yeah. What was the plan growing up, mate? Did you want to be a car dealer or a footy player? What was the story?
I wanted to be a footy player. I'm often referred to as a former under sevens winner Manly great. I wasn't much top, but I played in an era whereby, the boys that I played with, they went on to bigger and better things. And, had a few mates that played Origin, played for our country. I was pretty good on the bench. So, yeah, certainly didn't grow up thinking the car world was me. Went to school locally, left school, wanted to go to uni, didn't happen. And by chance, I fell into auctioneering at around my 18th birthday. And, I guess where the journey of cars led from there.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And what year did you join Barton's?
To join in 2001. Yep. So I clock up 25 years with the business this June.
I was going to say, it's a big milestone this year.
Yeah, a couple of weeks away, I turned 25, which is good.
Nice one.
Joined the business when I was 29.
Yeah, nice. And fair to say the business has evolved a fair bit in that 25 years, mate.
Yeah, when I started, we were a Holden and Mitsubishi dealership here at Wynnum. I think we had 46 staff. And I remember the times selling 100 cars a month was... just a celebration. A whole lot's changed since then, that's for sure.
Yeah. It's the future's hard to predict at the best of times, isn't it? But I don't know. Could you ever see yourself owning a business like Barton's and having a diverse portfolio of different businesses and that complement each other pretty well? Could you have ever predicted that as a young fella?
No, not really. I guess that first sort of 10 years of my career, I was in that auction game. As an auctioneer, it was the one thing I did well. I really enjoyed it. And, through those early years, I saw myself owning my own auction. That was a goal and a dream.
Yeah.
But, that quickly changed as I discovered the retail world gives you a lot more certainty and potentially for the longer term, you've got something to sell too down the track.
Yeah, absolutely. But, working in a privately owned, family owned business versus a corporate, it's different, isn't it? Like I often describe it as the bacon and eggs, like as a business owner, you're the pig, you're the ultimate sacrifice for that breakfast every morning where the chicken gets to live and fight another day, doesn't it? So it's,
Yep.
It's a different dynamic that unless you do it, it's pretty hard to appreciate. And then, have 400 odd staff on the payroll, it makes it an even bigger commitment.
Yeah, when you've just come out of months like last month or the last 2 months, I there's no doubt, that responsibility that comes with 400 staff. It rests on the shoulders, and you have your good times, but the tough times are here right now, and dealing with that and making decisions and looking at ways to remain competitive are really, really important. That you're making decisions in the best interests of the whole business, not just a few small people.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. What's been your philosophy to keeping it all together, Mark? Like you've added to the business with, bringing in Brisbane Camperland, Jayco and the commercial vehicle business and even having a pest management business. What's been your philosophy for, diversifying the business?
Yeah, look, there's a few things that pop out to me and, my time spent with Doug Barton, I mean, Doug retired in 2016, but, I was very fortunate to spend, my retail career learning under him. And, I think he was as good as anyone in industry. He certainly was a genuine retailer. And, those early lessons from him, pretty valuable. But, in his time, we operated under this premise of growth, maturity, and decline. And, to put some context to that, businesses grow, they mature, and, if you're not looking at ways to, continuously improve, or, look for ways to insulate yourself, decline's inevitable. And, he really drove that with me. And, you know, watching brands like Holden, I'm going to say slowly decline, the writing on the wall for that brand, maybe not for exiting the country, but, for where they ended up, we were seeing that sort of in that, post GFC period. It really became apparent to us that brands like Hyundai at the time were growing. And if we were going to be survival for the long term, we had to go down that same path. So, that goal of growth and that need to look for diversification really stems back for me right back into, probably pre-GFC, when I first became a shareholder in the business. And then, as we got through that, we had to look at ways that were going to give us some long-term security. And thankfully, our first entry outside of Holden and Mitsubishi was Hyundai.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's a little bit like walking up to the roulette table at the casino, though, isn't it? You can have your best theories and invest, and put your chips in where you think it's going to go, and ultimately the plan is for it to be successful. But sometimes you learn a little bit from the ones that aren't along the way as well, don't you?
Yeah, and I think even that's more relevant today than ever with the brands that are in market and still some to come. Whether it's roulette or backing horses, which one do you back?
Yeah.
That's certainly not an easy. That's not an easy obstacle at the moment. It's pretty tough.
Yeah, it is. It is. But I think whether we choose to admit it or not, it's what we actually kind of jump out of bed for in the morning, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
It makes the successes even that much more sweet.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I sit in an office that we built this business in, or this dealership, which was adding Hyundai and Subaru to our business in 2012. I just walked out of a meeting now for the catch up with you, and here we are again, looking on this current existing site, adding showrooms to accommodate new brands, slicing up existing showrooms to make them right size for the size of the market the brands represent today. And, I walk out of a meeting with a builder and an architect with so much uncertainty around, what size should each brand have and which brand should be here. Whilst we got a plan, we probably don't have the jigsaw is certainly far from being solved.
Yeah. Yeah, unfortunately the reception on the crystal ball isn't as fine as your streaming channels, isn't it? It's just the best hypothesis wins.
Well, I think even I think most relevant, the last 3 months have really probably thrown a curveball at all of us that none of us saw coming with the fuel wars.
Yes.
And just what an effect that's had on our industry. We're having to make change in direction in a few short term plans that we didn't see at all. 3 or 4 months ago. So it's changing by the month, not by the year.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, sometimes by the week, nearly.
Absolutely.
Yeah, like I think most of the clients I'm speaking to, they had the tail end of May was not too bad. June, depending on which franchise you're in, has a bit of an upswing or a little bit of nervousness about it. But yeah, either way, it's take each day as it comes.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hearing some pretty damning outcomes in terms of what April was, and yeah, I think you're right. May was very disruptive, and yeah, whilst it may have finished well, I mean, we do head into June. The sheer weight of marketing and the offers in the marketplace right now are as good as we've seen since COVID. If you're a consumer, you're certainly in the right seat to
Yes.
buy a motor car. So, you'd have to think the sheer weight of the market, the volume of inventory around, the dealers' need to move it. I think June will take care of itself.
Yeah, buyer's market for sure. That's for sure.
Yeah.
They've got a lot of power at the moment. That's definitely different from the good old COVID days, which was just too
Yeah.
good to be true.
Yeah.
And one thing that I know that you do very well, and I'm curious about this, and typically, family businesses aren't well known for having that that big infrastructure behind them, aren't they? Like, they run on the smell of an oily rag. But you've been a very big embracer of technology. Like AI is something, isn't a swear word in the Barton's world, is it? From my understanding.
No, look, we're finding for our size business, if we're going to remain relevant and competitive into the future, we have to find ways to be more efficient. We need to use the people we've got better. Um, Knowing the big guys, when they jump on and want to play in that space, they've got budgets that will, blow us out of the water. But, we've been pretty quick to market to embrace some of the technology. I think we've got a really nimble, dynamic group of senior managers, and our ownership structure is probably a little bit unique. I'm not the only shareholder of the business. I've got 7 other shareholders in our model now,
Yeah.
and they range in age from 32 to 55. So there's a good. It's a relatively average age. In that early 40s, you're dealing with some people who get technology.
Mm.
I'm probably the dinosaur at 54, so. Um,
Yeah.
I think we're moving at speed. I mean, our project to date is just over a year old, and um, we would have spent well in excess of $500,000 on the project to get us where we are, and I feel like we haven't even scratched the surface. But we're building the Barton's brain, as we call it, which is our own source of truth. There's so much information gone into that. The ability for the team now to extract information out there expediently and accurately is interesting to watch. And some of the tools that I think we'll see the fruits of in the back half of this year are really exciting. So yeah, it's a bit of fun, but ultimately, for all of the fun that comes with this space, it has to pay. It has to be a return on investment, and
Yeah.
to date, maybe that's not the case, but we'll certainly start to see some of that.
I think naturally it is. And I think one thing that I think anyone that's kind of had a look at the AI space, and I think it's either something that people are curious about or scared of. I don't know if there's many people between the two ends, but I think most people, and I share this opinion as well, is that the increase of productivity is actually the return on the investment, isn't it? It's not necessarily the replacement of that person. It's exponentially increasing their output is where the real rubber meets the road, so to speak.
Yeah, without a doubt. Like we I think it's the mentality you take internally. Like we try to not even use the terminology AI chatbots. We refer to them as digital employees. So,
Yes.
within our organizational structure now, our projects have their own organizational chart. So, we've got 12 digital employees across the business. They've all got names. They all perform varying functions, from whether that be answering calls to sending reminders out through CRM. We've certainly got them in HR, and some of the more common ones in the industry that are dealing with customers online through sales and service. But we train them. I mean, I
Yeah.
guess first of all we name them, we train them, and continually try to develop their skill set.
Yeah.
I
Well,
love.
that's the trade-off, isn't it? The better they are, like a team member in a way. The more you coach, the better the output, isn't it? It's it's a little bit the more you put in, the more you get out.
Yeah, and it's pretty simple. I mean, we're no different, even with our digital employees. You're out there pushing hard to get them to a certain level, and we get them there. And as we do with our, human-based employees, you train them, and you become complacent. And we've found that even with our digital team, we stopped training for a while. Everyone got too busy, and we found we weren't just making the progress with the digital team that we should have. But it was back to basics and having our already existing management spend time with those digital employees, the return is exponential. But you've got to spend time on them and almost daily.
Yeah.
So we are, I think we're pretty rigid in that sense. We use a combination of an internal set of resources now. So we've got 1.5 full-time bodies who just work in that tech department,
Right.
in conjunction with a company called Advancer. The guy that owns and runs that, he's on site in our business no less than sort of 2.5 days a week, and has been now for over a year. And we're really making some headway, which is good.
Yeah. What's the most surprising thing you've learnt out of that experience, would you say? What comes to mind when you think about that?
Yeah, look, I think this probably won't come as a surprise to most in the industry, but the thing that's really hit home to me is the real lack of the lack of attention from our DMS providers to give
Yeah.
the dealers meaningful solutions to access data, right? And then to be able to use that data to help us run our businesses. It's almost like it's constructive. It's a constructive plan from our DMS providers to
Yeah.
do everything in their possible power to restrict us getting the data that we want efficiently and economically. So, we're frustrated by that. Hence why we're building our own brain, which we keep putting data into, because it's far easier for us to extract data out of our own brain and our own AI infrastructure than it is out of their dealer management systems. And,
Yeah.
I just shake my head. To this day, we've got so much more we could bring to the table with AI. But our biggest barrier is our DMS provider. They just will not cooperate. They just don't want to play, and in fact, they just want to do things that create them more revenue. So yeah, it's probably the biggest thing I've learned out of it. How frustrating they are to cooperate with us.
Yeah, it's I think that's a whole other topic for a whole other podcast, to be honest. It's yeah, I think that's why you see in a lot of, like in the States, for example, there's actually a dealer body that all got together and wrote their own DMS for that exact reason. Our market may be not as big for that, but the way the technology is going, maybe that day isn't too far away where you won't be beholden to a software as a service provider, basically, that has complete control over how you use it.
It's unconscionable, right? I mean, we actually take about 3,000 calls a month now, coming in, that we are giving customers a choice to deal with a digital service booking agent. Now, we give customers the choice. Do you want to skip the queue? Do you want to talk to our digital service agent for basic bookings, right?
Yep.
So, and we are booking every day, probably not a lot, but maybe 30 or 40 service bookings a day where a customer chooses. They're on the phone and they're off the phone in about 1.8 minutes. Now, that's efficient for them.
Absolutely.
And also, if they ring at a busy time, they can get straight through. We, for a year, have been banging down our DMS to wanting to give us an API to connect in, so we don't then have to take that information and rebook it into the system. They just do not want to play. So it's so inefficient. Whilst we've picked up some time saving, what we could do at speed and at significantly reduced costs, it's phenomenal.
Yes.
But the only barrier is the DMS. So,
Yep.
they're actually holding back our ability to deliver a first-rate customer service. So it's more than the cost, and it's more than the barrier.
Yeah, absolutely. A massive frustration. And it all contributes to the end result, isn't it? Like the challenges in the business are big enough at the moment, without having your infrastructure holding you back.
Yeah, without a doubt, Ryan, without a doubt.
Yeah. And what about, you mentioned earlier you've got 7 stakeholders in the business, which I think in my view, I think the key to the stability that you've had there in the organization is, stability breeds stability, isn't it? Where you've got the head of each of the business unit, literally being invested in the business, then stability permeates underneath them. Would you say that's fairly accurate?
Yeah, I think Doug Barton referred to it back when I first bought in, which was back in 2009, as golden handcuffs. So true.
Yeah.
But the opportunity he gave me, when it was time for him to get out, I was in a position then, probably it was too big for me to do on my own at that particular time. And, I engaged another partner. We were susceptible to getting bought out at that time by the big guys.
Yep.
I owned 40% of the business back in 2016. The ability to buy 100 wasn't real. Brought a partner in. They were great in the sense I think they helped me through that transition. The partnership didn't work longer term, and that's okay. For both sides, we still come
Yep.
out of it the other side okay. But my senior team through that process were instrumental in, what was another transition that we had to endure. And, I then was able to own 100% of the business. I took on some more debt, but I had this real good core handful of guys and girls. And, my commitment to them was I would give them the opportunity that was afforded to me by Doug in earlier years. So, the five of them come on and they bought 25% of the business collectively back in 2020, I don't know, 22 now, I think it was. So, and in that mix, there was, three guys and two of our ladies. So, and most recently, two of our financial controllers have come on to take some minor equity as well, which is great. So, I'm very, very conscious of a succession plan. I'm 54. These guys, at some point, if they can continue to grow their shareholding like I did, there's no reason why we can't continue for generations to come to be a family-owned business. Throw into the mix, I've got two sons that have been in the business now since they left school, and they play a part in that succession plan as well.
Yeah. It's you can have a business that remains very stable, just with different eras. With the Mark Beitz era and whoever follows on after the footsteps.
Yeah, well, in that shareholding mix, I've got a really good balance of different skill sets.
Yeah.
One of our DPs and shareholders, she come from a finance background. That's her DNA. I've got two of the boys who really come from used car backgrounds. One from a service and selling, and the other one just from sales. Our CFO, real smart egg, and he complements the team as do our two financial controllers. So, it's a broad section of shareholders, and across the business, those guys work really well as a team. So I think we've got, at the highest level, we're stable.
Yeah.
At a management level, I think there's a whole range of managers that want to be a part of the journey. We're probably not dissimilar to most. Our challenge is really lay down on the ground, front of house, service advisors, sales. It's an area, it's still our Achilles heel. So, we're just exploring a few ways to try and fill some of those gaps, because delivering customer service at where we need it to be, it's fundamentally all about people, right? So
Absolutely, yeah. As much of technology as you can bolt onto it, the belly to belly contact is still what counts for the most, isn't it?
yeah, without a doubt, that hasn't changed.
Yeah. So in 10 years from now, or in 2035, are you going to be on a beach somewhere, do you think, mate, or still can't help yourself, still hard at it?
Yeah, I think the last few years have really helped me shape what that next 10 years does look like. If you had asked me that question maybe, 2.5 years ago, I probably would have said then, well, I did say then, 5 years would see me out, and hopefully a transition through, to probably an easier way of life. But what's happened in the last 2.5, 3 years is our industry has changed significantly, and the easy days are gone. Here we are having to reinvest back into our business to make sure that we protect the value of them. And you've got to get your mind around that. So, that I've done. I'm watching the younger crew come through. And, my two sons are good examples. One's 25, one's 28. And, again, 3 years ago, they weren't doing what they're doing now. So them, along with my shareholders, look, I'd love nothing better to see our business, continue on its journey. And, maybe in 10 years' time, I'm still here, but in a reduced capacity. And these guys own the majority of the business. And, ultimately, how many people really retire at 60 these days? It's pretty
No,
low.
I don't think anyone's capable of doing it. Really, it's
No.
yeah, it's I think people are always better with a purpose, Mark. In my opinion, would give a reason to jump out of bed and keep the cogs turning and applying yourself to something.
Yeah, and it's I think the business is changing so much. It's not rinse and repeat. It's far from it.
Yeah.
The running of an automotive business like ours now takes a different style of person than it did 10 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's a little bit like the George Jetsons of the moment, isn't it? I think, if you'd asked us 10 years ago what we thought today would look like, we'd say flying cars, but, it's clearly not the case. But 10 years from now, what's the business going to look like? Ooh, who knows? It's
If you had asked me 5 years ago, would we own a caravan dealership, I would have laughed at you, right? But,
yeah,
that opportunity came up and, fortuitously, it's probably one of the best decisions we made.
yeah,
It wasn't a cheap business, but it was certainly a very well-known family-owned business that just aligned with, what our values and culture was like, and it was on our doorstep. And
yeah,
it was the car business that probably helped us buy that.
yep,
But it's the caravan business that supports the car business today.
yeah, absolutely. And you got even though it's a caravan business, it's the same. It's the same business, isn't it? It's just it's a service point. It's a sales point. It's the processes and procedures are very, 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 very close and similar. So, applying that automotive knowledge and acumen to what is perceived to be a less refined business, it only complements the asset.
Yeah, without a doubt. Look, Jayco is, in terms of a brand in this country, not dissimilar to Toyota.
Yes. Yeah, I own one.
So,
I can say that much. I've got a Jayco.
hey, they may not be the best caravan in market, but certainly in terms of consistency and brand loyalty and network for service, they are hands down. They're affordable. And, as a brand, it just aligned with what we were doing. I mean, fundamentally, the whole RV sector for us, it was almost identical. But you take the model back to maybe where the auto industry was 10 years ago, to your words, it, maybe not as refined. And I think that's the point of difference we're bringing to that industry is the ability to take it into the next, I think, to the next stage. And for us, it's an exciting connection. Those customers now we're just starting to see that are moving between our businesses from caravans to cars and cars back. We're seeing that cross-pollination of our customer base now, and I think for the longer term, that gives you that insulation, right, in tough times. It helps.
Absolutely. Final question for you, mate. What's the one thing you wish someone had told you 25 years ago that you would have loved to know? What comes to mind when you think about that question?
The one thing someone had told me 25 years ago. I often try and share this back with my team. Just talk more. Don't try and solve this. I mean, there's rarely a new idea that you're going to just wake up one day with and, implement it and make you $1 million. Generally the sharing of knowledge is probably one of the best lessons I learned. And, I think in recent years, I try and share that knowledge with my team more than ever. The more they know, and maybe I didn't do this as well in my earlier years because I was that guy who felt that I had to do it to get the result.
Yes.
I'm learning now. Develop those people around you and let them do the job. And I guess it's easier to say in your 50s because when you're in your 30s and 40s, you're running hard. You're running hard and you think you have all of the answers, but share the knowledge, develop other people, and let them come along for the journey. There's enough to go around for more.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's a lesson learned hard, but once you get there, it's empowering on all levels, isn't it? Very good, mate. Anything coming up in the Bartons world that you would love to plug or share or worth mentioning? Do you think?
Yeah, look, Cameron, one of the big things, there's two big things I think we're embarking on right now. one is just right-sizing our business for the future. And what I mean by that, we've got facilities that have stood the test of time, but we need more brands on the existing footprint. So we're doing something that's not new, but I think we're going to provide a point of difference in the market. We're well into an auto mall concept out of our Wynnum business. So, Barton's that, when I first joined back in '01, it was 2 brands on a small site. We'll end up probably by Christmas time, early into 27, we'll have 13, maybe 14 brands on our site.
Wow.
Now, there's plenty of businesses in town that have that, but not under one control.
No.
They tend to be independently run. So I think we'll become a pretty handy destination for the consumer. It'll give us probably close to a 50% share of market. So, for 1 in 2 buyers, our goal between now and sort of this time next year is to, within our reach, sell, 1 in every 2 cars sold within our prime market area or thereabouts, and give people choice because, our brand, whilst we know it to be strong, we don't have Toyota, we don't have BYD,
Yeah.
so that's fine. Not everyone wants a Toyota or a BYD for that matter.
No.
So yeah, that's the auto mall vision is coming to life. There's a ton of disruption this year with buildings, but what we have at the end of it, will be a mini shopping centre for auto. And the other
like
one
something
really
very
is
attractive.
yeah, look, it is. I mean, what Eagers were trying to do out at the airport was such a behemoth.
Yes.
I guess we've taken away from that and just built a smaller version that's going to serve our side of town well. We don't need to be the biggest in town, and we never will be. But I feel we can bring this to life. So it's well underway, and the interest from some of our brands and partners to want to be involved in that is interesting. It's significantly high, considering where we are on the Bayside in Brizzy.
Yeah. Well, that's I think that's the thing, isn't it? At the end of the day, as progressive as the business is and as big as it's grown, it's still a community-based business, isn't it? Where, the Bayside community supports you and you support it. And that's how really, whether you're in 2025 or 1925, that's the way really the car industry and dealers have been, isn't it?
Yeah, very much so. And look, the other piece we're I'm going to say we're experimenting with, and we have been for a few years now, is this part-time flexible workforce.
Yes.
Our industry's been very much a 6-day-a-week retail business that's brutal on hours and brutal on our people. We're an industry where customers have super high expectations, which is fine, but we need to have more A-graders that deliver that. So you just don't get A-graders in the numbers we need now that want to work 9-10 hour days and 6 days a week. So it's teaching our industry how to manage a part-time workforce. I look at the retailers out there, whether it be David Jones, Kmart, there's no end of successful retailers who manage this part-time flexible workforce through rosters and, running shifts. If our industry is going to deliver that customer service level that we need to get A-graders, and we need to get those 20 hours a week, 30-hour a week people. That's all they want to work. Again, that's fine, but accommodate them in our industry. So we're embarking on that journey. We've had a lot of inquiry to some recent posts and recruitment calling out for that style of worker. Even down to we've had some successful uni students. Let's be honest, they've got 20 or 30 hours a week spare going to uni for 3 or 4 years.
And good brains as well. So they're not silly.
Good people, and they're succeeding. So the only challenge in all of that is teaching our management that have been in the industry for 10, 15, 20 years is that's not what was ever afforded to them.
Yes.
And teaching them how to manage rosters, teaching people how to job share. Nothing new, but certainly a challenge for our industry.
Absolutely, yeah. But naturally, you manage the individual differently. because, I know one thing you're doing with sales is, not necessarily having that, high commission focused remuneration based. It's more about, rewarding the individual, for doing a great job and delivering a great experience. That in turn makes the management style of the individual differently, doesn't it?
Well, it's a bit of both. We haven't veered away from what's always worked in industry. I've seen others try to do it, and I'm not convinced that's the only way. But it's a bit of both.
Yes.
So we've got retail sales consultants, and we're now trialing forward with I call them retail sales assistants. Less hours, less desire to go and earn big money, but they want a balance. They do exactly the same job. They're just doing it maybe at a slower speed, less pressure, and enjoying retail for what it should be, right?
Yeah.
And that's, delivering good customer experiences, because the buzz is not necessarily it's the sale. The buzz is seeing that person walk out of your business happy with the fact you've given them good service. And secondly, treating their, arguably the second biggest purchase of their life, treating that with the importance it deserves. So look, hey, we're far from have the perfect model, but that's the path we're going down. And I'm just watching the quality of the applicant has significantly changed as we go out trying to approach it in a different way.
All right. Well, that might be a podcast for another time, mate. We might investigate that a little bit further. It sounds very intriguing, but yeah, appreciate you. I really do appreciate your time today, Mark. It's been a pleasure, mate. And yeah, I'm sure people have got plenty out of the insights you've been able to deliver.
Thanks, Cameron. Yeah, good to share them. And look, appreciate you reaching out to have a talk.
A pleasure, mate. Appreciate your time too. Thanks, Mark.
Yeah, bye.
You've been listening to the Automotive Talent Show, where career stories, business journeys, and market insights come together from across the automotive industry. If you found value in this episode, follow the show and share it with someone in the industry. To learn more or connect with Cameron, search Automotive Talent on LinkedIn or visit automotivetalent.com.au. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.